Have you ever seen something small and felt your whole world crack? For me, it was a suitcase. A suitcase I never even knew I was packing. They say the truth will set you free, but they don't tell you that first. It will drown you. Sometimes, the only hand that pulls you up belongs to a total stranger who watched the betrayal begin. My name is Alara Vance. I'm an architect, just shy of 50, and I've built my reputation on sustainable design. I create buildings meant to last, to have integrity, structures with foundations that won't crack under pressure. My entire life has been about precision, about knowing exactly where the load-bearing walls are. The irony is thick enough to choke on. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the light inside the Cherry Creek Mall was that specific, sterile white that always feels too bright, bleaching the color from everything. It made the polished marble floors gleam and the mixed, heavy scents of expensive perfume and food court pretzels hang in the air. I was there looking for a gift, something for a senior partner at our firm, Etheria Designs. I was thinking about a leather briefcase, maybe a pen, mundane. And then I saw him, my husband, Julian Vance. He was standing 20 yards away, outside Ethelred Luggage, a store that sells absurdly expensive travel gear. Julian was supposed to be in a meeting with the City Planning Commission all afternoon. He had kissed me goodbye that morning, smelling of strong coffee and citrus aftershave, complaining about the zoning bureaucracy. He was the other half of Etheria Designs' my design-focused vision, his ruthless financial brain. We were a perfect team. He was not in a meeting, and he was not alone. She was with him. Sabrina Croft. The name hit me with a physical jolt. His college girlfriend, the one he always insisted was just ancient history. Now, she was one of Denver's most powerful real estate brokers, a woman we often and necessarily worked with. She was all sharp angles and a laugh that always sounded like breaking glass. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. Julian's hand was resting on the small of her back, a gesture of casual, familiar possession. They weren't just browsing, they were pointing, discussing. Then they walked inside. I moved without thinking, my body acting on pure, cold instinct. I slipped behind a massive marble support pillar, the stone cold against my shoulder. My heart began a low, heavy drum against my ribs. I watched them through the gap, my breath catching in my throat. They were laughing. Julian threw his head back in that way he did when he found something genuinely amusing. A laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Sabrina pointed to a sleek, titanium carry-on set. He nodded, looking pleased, and pulled his wallet from his jacket. Then he leaned in. She met him halfway. It wasn't a social peck. It wasn't a friendly thank you. It was a kiss. Deep, lingering, and absolute, a kiss that spoke of shared secrets and a future I had no part in. The artificial mall light illuminated them like a harsh spotlight, and I was the only audience member watching the floor drop out. My hands were shaking. I waited, pressed against the cold stone, until they emerged, Julian holding the receipt and the store clerk loading the new bags onto a trolley for them. They walked away, heading toward the north exit, Julian's arm now fully around her waist. I counted to 30, forcing air into my lungs. I am Alara Vance. I am composed. I pushed myself off the pillar, smoothed the front of my jacket, and walked into Ethelred Luggage. The air inside smelled of cured leather and metal polish. The young woman who had just served them was returning to the counter. She looked to be in her early 20s, her name tag reading Chloe. I forced a bright, slightly strained smile. Hi there. I think my husband was just in here, Julian Vance. He just bought that lovely titanium set. Chloe smiled back, a professional customer service smile. Oh, yes, he just left. It's a beautiful set. One of our best. He's terrible at surprises. I lied, the words feeling like gravel in my mouth. I tried to make my voice light, conspiratorial. He thinks he's being so sneaky, buying it for me for an upcoming trip. Could you just confirm which pieces he got? I want to make sure I don't accidentally buy the same ones. Chloe's smile faltered. Her eyes flickered over my face, a sudden flash of recognition, then confusion, and then, oh, God, it was pity, the single most soul-crushing expression a stranger can give you. Mrs. Vance, she whispered. Of course. My face had been in Denver Design Monthly last year, when the west wing of this very mall was renovated, using my designs. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Vance, she stammered, her professional mask crumbling away. She looked mortified. They paid cash. The world tilted. Paid cash for a $3,000 luggage set. Yes. She looked left and right, then leaned in. And I shouldn't be saying this, but I heard them talking. They were laughing about their one-way flights. My blood went cold. One way. Chloe nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and sympathy. To Zurich. They were joking about how the Highlands Project closing tomorrow would fund everything. The Highlands Project. My project. The largest, most complex, most innovative sustainable structure of my career. The crown jewel of Etheria Designs. My baby. Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. She leaned in even closer, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Vance. He said something else. When she stepped away to take a call, he looked at the bags and he smiled. He said, Elara won't even know what hit her until the accounts are drained. The expensive bags, the polished floors, the scent of leather, it all blurred into a nauseating wave. The ground beneath my feet, the very floor I had specified the materials for, felt like it was dissolving, drained. Zurich. One way. This wasn't just an affair. This was an exit strategy. This was theft. I must have mumbled a thank you. I don't remember walking out of the store. I don't remember the elevator ride to the parking garage. I only remember sitting in the driver's seat of my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white as the concrete walls of the parking structure seemed to close in on me. The Highlands Project wasn't just funding their getaway. It was the weapon Julian was using to destroy me. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights bleeding into the rain-slicked asphalt. I don't remember parking the car. I found myself standing in the foyer of our beautiful custom-built home, my design, my sanctuary, and it felt alien. The warm, reclaimed wood under my feet felt like a stage set. It was all a lie. Julian wasn't home yet. His lie about the City Planning Commission echoed in my head. I walked into my office, the quiet of the house pressing in on me, and made the call. The clerk at the planning office was polite and efficient. No, there was no meeting scheduled with Julian Vance today. There had been nothing on the books for him all week. The confirmation settled in my stomach like ice. I sat at my desk, the Eames chair I'd saved for months to buy suddenly uncomfortable. I logged into the Etheria Designs main server. Everything looked normal, my projects, my schematics, the shared calendars. But Julian, the financial brain, kept everything sensitive on a separate, private server, the one that held the contracts, the offshore accounts, the real numbers. I accessed the login screen. I typed the password we'd always used, a combination of our anniversary and our dog's name. Access denied. I tried again, thinking I'd mistyped. Access denied. My breath hitched. He had locked me out. The paranoia, which had been a low hum, was now a screaming siren. He had already locked me out of my own company. I stared at the blinking cursor, my mind racing. What would he use? Something arrogant. Something that meant something only to him. Then it hit me, a memory, sharp and bitter, from over a decade ago. My first solo project, a small, passive solar greenhouse I'd designed for a nonprofit. Julian had scoffed at it. It's a beautiful hobby, Elara, he'd said, but it's not profitable. I hated that he'd been right, but I loved that design. I still knew the budget code by heart. It was my initials, the project name, and the date I'd won the bid. I typed it in. Access granted. The sickness rose in my throat. He hadn't used a symbol of our love as his key. He'd used a symbol of his condescension toward me. The server files opened. It was immaculate, organized. Julian was nothing if not meticulous. And there, sitting brazenly on the root drive, was a folder labeled Project Alpine. My hand trembled as I clicked it. It was all there. Emails between him and Sabrina, stretching back over a year. Their coded flirtations had slowly evolved into concrete, criminal planning. The tone was sickening, a breezy intimacy that discussed the complete evisceration of my life as if they were planning a weekend brunch. This was so much worse than an affair. They weren't just stealing the proceeds from the Highlands deal. They were stealing the project itself. The plan was laid out in a series of encrypted memos. Step 1, Julian, citing unexpected cost overruns and sudden financial instability at Etheria Designs, would execute an emergency sale of the Highlands project. He would sell it to a shell corporation called Apex Holdings for a fraction of its value, just enough to cover the immediate debts. I did a quick search. Apex Holdings was registered in Delaware, and its sole director was listed in the documents. Sabrina Croft. Step 2. The moment the ink was dry, Sabrina, as Apex, would sell the Highlands project to a secret waiting buyer and international investment group called Helvetia Innovations. The real price tag, $50 million. They would wire the money to an account in Zurich and be gone by the end of the week. My project. My $50 million project. Sold for pennies to his mistress, then flipped for its true value. But there was more. I kept digging, frantic now. I found another document buried in a subfolder. A loan agreement. Julian had used a forged version of my digital signature to secure a massive, short-term, private hard money loan. He had mortgaged everything. The Etheria Designs office building, our equipment, our entire portfolio, all of our intellectual property, every design I had ever drawn. The terms were brutal. The loan was due, in full, in 72 hours. I finally understood. The financial instability he was using to justify the sale to Apex was this very loan, a loan he had manufactured. The moment the Highlands project was sold for that fractional price, Etheria Designs would officially default. The loan sharks would seize everything. The company, the building, my life's work. Julian and Sabrina wouldn't just be rich, they would be free, and I would be left with nothing but the smoking crater of our company and a mountain of personal debt so high I'd never climb out. He wasn't just leaving me, he was professionally executing me. The shock evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. I grabbed an encrypted hard drive from my safe. I didn't just look. I copied. I took screenshots. Every email, every memo, every forged signature, every wire transfer instruction, every document related to Apex Holdings and Helvetia Innovations. The click of the mouse was the only sound in the room, a rhythmic, steady count as I gathered my ammunition. He thought he was the only one with a brain for strategy. He was wrong. With the encrypted drive warm in my hand, my first impulse was to call David Lipton, our corporate attorney. My fingers were actually dialing his number before my brain caught up. I hung up. David and Julian played golf every second Thursday. David was at our house for Christmas. He was Julian's fraternity brother. Calling David would be tantamount to giving Julian a courtesy call, a warning. I was utterly alone. Every professional contact, every lawyer, every banker in my network was a potential friend of Julian's. He had built our financial world, and he had built it to protect himself. I powered my laptop back on, but this time, I used a secure browser and a VPN I'd installed ages ago for working overseas. I didn't search for divorce attorneys. This was leagues beyond infidelity. My search terms were complex corporate fraud Denver, forensic accounting litigation, and piercing the corporate veil. One name kept appearing, linked to stories of hostile takeovers, whistleblowers, and spectacular corporate implosions. Marcus Thorne. The legal blogs and financial papers described him with a kind of terrified awe. One journalist called him a boa constrictor in a bespoke suit. Another said he was the man you hired when you needed to surgically remove a parasitic executive. He was both a forensic accountant and a shark of a litigator. He was perfect. His website was nothing but a name, an address, and a number. I called from a burner app. A crisp, female voice answered. Thorne Associates. I need to speak with Mr. Thorne. It's about a multi-million-dollar fiduciary breach and immediate, ongoing corporate fraud. There was a brief pause. The temperature of her voice remained unchanged. He has a cancellation at 7 p.m. Can you be here? Yes. Bring everything. His office wasn't a gleaming tower. It was a discreet, restored brownstone in Capitol Hill, the kind of building that cost more than a skyscraper floor. The only marker was a small brass plaque by the oak door M. Thorne. The interior was silent, furnished with heavy mahogany and subdued lighting. It smelled of old books and money. Marcus Thorne himself was in his late 60s, impeccably dressed, with pale, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He didn't stand, didn't shake my hand. He simply gestured to the leather chair opposite his vast, empty desk. You have 1 hour. Mrs. Vance. My assistant tells me you have a fraud claim. I sat. I began with the facts, delivered as calmly as I could. The mall, the luggage, Sabrina Croft, the one-way tickets to Zurich. He steepled his fingers, his expression one of profound, almost insulting, boredom. Mrs. Vance, I understand you're distressed, but this is a marital dispute. I am not a divorce lawyer. I do not handle infidelity. My rate is $2,000 an hour, and frankly, you are wasting both your time and mine. He's stealing $50 million, I said, my voice cutting through his condescension. His expression didn't change, but he didn't interrupt me again. He's using our company, Etheria Designs, as a piggy bank to fund his escape with his mistress, and he's forged my signature to do it. I slid the encrypted hard drive across the polished wood. The password is the budget code for my first solo project, the one he called unprofitable. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. He plugged the drive into a private terminal built into his desk. I watched him navigate. The folder is Project Alpine. He opened it. He read the emails first, his eyes scanning the lines with unnerving speed. He saw the setup, the plan to sell the Highlands project to Apex Holdings. He saw Sabrina's name on the shell company's incorporation documents. He saw the subsequent contract to sell the same project to Helvetia Innovations. $50 million, he murmured, more to himself than to me. That's not the worst part, I said. Look at the subfolder. Leverage. File 30B. He clicked. He read the loan agreement. He saw the forged digital signature. He saw the assets pledged my office, my intellectual property, my entire life's work. He saw the 72-hour repayment clause. The shift was immediate and total. The bored, dismissive lawyer was gone. In his place was the boa constrictor. He looked up from the screen, his pale eyes now completely alert, cold, and predatory. Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice a full octave lower. This is not a divorce. This is organized crime. Your husband has structured this to look like a desperate business failure, while in fact it is a meticulously planned, high-level asset strip. He is not just leaving you, he is liquidating you. A wave of vertigo hit me. So we stop it, I said, my voice trembling. We file an injunction. We call the police. We warn Helvetia. Absolutely not, Marcus snapped, standing up. He began to pace. You do any of that. You tip your hand. The sale is tomorrow. The second Julian smells a problem. He and Ms. Croft will be gone. They'll drop the Helvetia deal, drain every liquid account, destroy the server, and be on that flight. They'll have millions, and you'll be left with nothing but this fraudulent loan. You'll spend the next 10 years in court trying to prove the signature was forged, by which time the loan sharks will have taken your home, your company, everything. You cannot win a direct fight. He's built a fortress. Then what do we do? I felt the cold dread returning. Marcus stopped pacing and smiled, a thin, reptilian expression. We don't stop the sale. We let him think he's won. We let him walk right into his own trap. He turned back to his desk. We need to know who Apex Holdings is, and we need to know who Helvetia Innovations really is. They are the key. I will start digging. Your husband thinks he's a genius. Let's find out just how smart he really is. I spent the night in my office, surviving on black coffee and an adrenaline-fueled rage. Julian wouldn't be home. He'd sent a text, a pathetic, transparent lie about the planning meeting running impossibly late and him staying at the downtown club. He was probably with her, toasting their genius with my money. At 4 a.m, my secure line buzzed. It was Marcus. His voice was awake, clipped, and devoid of emotion. Apex Holdings is a ghost, he said. Registered in Delaware, as expected. It's a shell within a shell, layered through 2 other holding companies. It's designed to be completely anonymous. They're good. My stomach tightened. So that's it? We're stuck. No, he said. They're arrogant. The initial incorporation fee, $900, was paid with a credit card, a secondary American Express, issued to a holding company, which is, in turn, owned by Ms. Sabrina Croft. I let out a shaky breath. She tied herself to it. A stupid, lazy mistake. She's tied herself directly to the fraudulent entity. Marcus confirmed. He sounded almost pleased. I'm digging into Helvetia Innovations now. They are Swiss, much cleaner, and far harder to crack. They look legitimate, which means they're either the final mark or they're the real professionals. You get some rest. Mrs. Vance, you look like hell, I imagine. I hung up, but rest was impossible. He told me to wait, but I am an architect. My entire career is built on the fact that I see the details others miss. I couldn't just sit and let the lawyers work. My power, my expertise, was in my work. I turned to my own workstation, the one with the quad high-resolution monitors, and I pulled up the master file for the Highlands project. My masterpiece. I knew every line, every structural joint, every single material specification. It was an extension of my own mind. I opened the financial ledgers that Julian managed, cross-referencing them with the architectural plans and the supply chain invoices. I wasn't looking for the big $50 million theft. Project Alpine had already shown me that. I was looking for the small leaks, the ones he must have been using to siphon money for their travel, their cash, their new life, before the final heist. It took 3 hours of frantic, obsessive digging. But I found it. It was in the foundation specs. My design specified a custom sustainable concrete blend high density, low carbon, reinforced with recycled steel fibers. It was expensive, state-of-the-art, and the absolute core of the building's structural and green certification. It was my signature. But the payment records in Julian's ledger told a different story. The purchase orders weren't for my specified blend. They were for Standard Mix 3B, a cheap, bottom-shelf concrete, the kind of stuff you use for a backyard patio, not a 20-story commercial tower. He had paid the supplier for the cheap mix, but billed the project budget and our lenders for my expensive mix. The difference he'd pocketed was millions. He was gutting the construction budget from the inside out. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. It wasn't just theft. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Standard Mix 3B couldn't support the load I had designed. Not with the innovative open plan structure, the glass curtain walls, the weight of the rooftop green space. It wouldn't collapse tomorrow. But in 5 years, 10 under the right stress conditions, a heavy snow load, a high wind, sheer it would fail. The cracks would start in the foundation, my foundation, and the whole thing would come down. He wasn't just selling a building. He was selling a $50 million ticking time bomb. He was selling a tomb. How? I whispered to the empty room. How did he do it? A change that significant, a material substitution on the foundation, would require multiple inspections, constant oversight, sign-offs, city permits. I raced back to the server, my hands shaking so badly I could barely type. I pulled the inspection reports. I found them. All present, all stamped, all approved. A city inspector had signed off on every single stage of the pour. A city inspector had looked at cheap, substandard concrete and certified it as my high-grade, sustainable design. This wasn't just Julian and Sabrina. This was a conspiracy. This was bribery of a public official. My mind flashed back to the mall, the smell of perfume, the titanium luggage, Chloe, the girl in the store, the one who heard Zurich, the one who heard Highlands Project, the one who heard Until the Accounts Are Drained. She was the only other person who had seen the beginning, the only person who wasn't part of my compromised, rotten world. I had to talk to her again. I had to know if she heard anything else. Anything at all. I grabbed my keys, ignoring the shattered cup on the floor. I drove back to the Cherry Creek Mall, the morning rush hour traffic a blur of red lights. I ran to Ethelred Luggage, the same polished leather smell, the same sterile light. But Chloe wasn't at the counter. A middle-aged manager approached me, his smile professional. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Chloe, the sales associate who was working yesterday afternoon." The manager frowned, consulting a schedule. "Chloe, she's not in today. She called out this morning. Sick." Sounded awful. Apparently. Did she say anything else when she'll be back? No, just that she was sick. It was strange, actually, he added, lowering his voice. She left her shift in a real hurry yesterday. Seemed rattled. Just clocked out and ran. A cold, sharp chill ran straight through me. It wasn't the flu. It was fear. Julian and Sabrina were tying up loose ends. Or worse. She had seen them come back. I left the store, my heart hammering. I had to find her. I walked straight to the mall's central administrative office. As the lead architect for the retail wing's redesign, Etheria Designs still managed the tenant files and employee contact lists for security and building access. It was unethical. It was probably illegal. I didn't care. I found her file. Chloe Jensen, an apartment address in Aurora. I was already moving toward the exit. I had to get to her before Julian, or someone worse, did. The drive to Aurora was a desperate, high-speed blur, a stark contrast to my usual, measured commute. This wasn't my Denver, the world of curated public spaces and soaring, sustainable architecture. This was a land of sprawling 3-story apartment complexes with faded siding and overflowing dumpsters, a place where people lived packed in, separated by thin walls. I found her building. I parked and ran up the flimsy, echoing exterior stairs to apartment 205. My heart was a fist pounding against my ribs. I knocked, the sound sharp and too loud in the quiet, breezeway-style hall that smelled of stale cigarettes and damp carpet. I heard the distinct sound of a security chain sliding. The door opened a few inches, held in place. Chloe peered out. Her eyes were wide and bloodshot. When she saw me, she physically recoiled, her face a mask of pure terror. She didn't look sick. She looked hunted. "Go away," she hissed, trying to force the door shut. "Please, just go away." I didn't see anything. I don't know anything. Her panic was so raw it cut through my own. I put my hand flat against the door, holding it open. "Chloe, please. My name is Alara Vance. I'm the woman from the mall yesterday. I am not here to hurt you." "You're his wife," she cried, her voice cracking. "Yes, I am," I said, trying to keep my voice low and calm. "And he is lying to me. He is destroying my company. Chloe, I'm not here to silence you. I'm here because you told me the truth, and because of that, you are in danger. I think I am. Too." The pressure against the door eased. I heard her fumbling with the chain. The door swung open. Her tiny, tidy apartment was in chaos. A half-packed duffel bag was open on the sofa. Clothes were strewn on the floor. She had been running. "You're leaving," I said. It wasn't a question. "I was," she whispered, backing away from me. "I was going to my sister's in Fort Collins. I called in sick." She wrapped her arms around her chest. "After you left yesterday, she came back." "Who?" "The woman he was with." Chloe nodded, tears brimming. "Sabrina. About an hour later, I was restocking the displays. She didn't buy anything. She just stood at the counter and stared at me. She didn't say a word. She just stared. For maybe a full minute. She knew. Mrs. Vance. She knew I'd recognized you. She knew I'd heard them talking." A cold dread washed over me. "What did you do?" "I hid in the stockroom until my shift ended and I ran," she said, a sob escaping. "She's not just some woman. She looked, I don't know. She looked like she could make people disappear. I'm just a girl who sells suitcases. Mrs. Vance, I don't want any trouble." "You're not just a girl," I said, my voice hardening. "You're a witness, and they know it." I pulled a card from my pocket. "This is my attorney, Marcus Thorne. He's not a divorce lawyer. He's a specialist in corporate fraud. He will protect you. I will pay for everything. He can have you in a safe place, legally protected, within an hour. But in exchange, you have to tell me everything. Every single word you heard, no matter how small." She looked at the card, then at my face, searching for a trick. She saw none. She saw, I think, a woman as desperate as she was. She sank onto the arm of her sofa. They were talking about money. When they were at the counter, paying cash. She seemed annoyed. She complained about having to pay Frank again. My entire body went still. Frank. What did she say? I asked, my voice a whisper. She said, "This is getting expensive. I can't believe we have to pay Frank again." "And your husband?" "Julian." He just laughed. He put his hand on her back and told her not to worry. He said, "Babe, as long as Frank keeps his mouth shut about the foundation reports until the money hits the Zurich account, he can have whatever he wants." He said he wasn't a problem, just an expense. Foundation reports. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. The cheap concrete, the fake inspections, the ticking time bomb. It wasn't just a substitution, it was a conspiracy. Julian had bribed a city inspector named Frank to sign off on a fraudulent, dangerous building, and Chloe had just given me the proof. Was there anything else? I pressed, my mind racing. Anything at all? She stood up, agitated, as another memory surfaced. Yes, it was weird. They didn't just buy the titanium carry-on set. The woman, Sabrina, she had another bag with her. A heavy, black canvas duffel. She asked me to hold it behind the counter while they used the restroom, said it was getting heavy and she didn't want to drag it. And Mrs. Vance, I shouldn't have, but the zipper was partly open, and when I lifted it, it was impossibly heavy, like full of bricks. I thought it was camera gear or something, but I saw inside. It was lined with dark felt, and it was full of small, gold bars, the kind you see in movies, dozens of them, stacked neatly. Gold, of course, the cash payment, the one-way tickets. They weren't just moving numbers in an account. They were liquidating, turning their stolen cash into untraceable, physical, transportable wealth. The new, expensive luggage wasn't just for clothes. It was to transport the gold. I looked at this terrified young woman who had just handed me the keys to everything. My husband wasn't just a cheating thief. He was a sophisticated, cold-blooded con man, willing to bribe public officials and risk the lives of hundreds of people in a faulty building, all so he could melt down his assets and vanish. "Chloe," I said, my voice now pure steel, "you're right to be scared, but you're not going to Fort Collins. You are going to call Mr. Thorne right now. You are going to a hotel, and he is sending a private security guard. And then you are going to tell him exactly what you just told me." I was back in my car, the quiet hum of the engine a stark contrast to the storm in my head. I left Chloe in the hands of Marcus Thorne's security, a silent, capable man who had arrived in under 20 minutes. My first call was to Marcus. "His name is Frank," I said, my voice flat. "He's the city inspector. Julian bribed him to sign off on the foundation reports, and they're liquidating assets." Chloe saw a duffel bag full of gold bars. The line was silent for a beat. "Frank," Marcus repeated. "Public corruption. This just went from a felony to a federal case. And gold. That's the ballast, so they don't sink when they jump ship." He didn't need any more. He called back 3 hours later. "Frank Russo," he said, his voice clipped with controlled satisfaction. "Senior building inspector. A man with a known gambling problem and a salary that in no way supports his lifestyle. He has been untouchable for a decade. And he is the inspector of record for every single phase of the Highlands project." "So we have him," I said. A desperate, hollow victory. "We have my analysis of the concrete. We have the forged loan. And now we have Chloe's sworn testimony about Frank. We go to the district attorney. We stop this." "No," Marcus said. His voice was sharp, cutting through my desperate haze. "The DA moves like a glacier. We have less than 24 hours. By the time they assign an assistant prosecutor, Julian's plane will have landed, the $50 million will be gone, and that hard money loan will have defaulted. Your company will be seized before an indictment is even written. Time is up. Mrs. Vance, we cannot just confront Julian. We must detonate the entire game." "What does that mean?" "It means we stop focusing on the sellers," he said. "We focus on the buyer, Helvetia Innovations." He'd been digging. "They aren't a shell," he explained, his tone shifting to that of a strategist. "They are a 100-year-old Swiss investment conglomerate. They specialize in long-term, stable, blue-chip assets. They are meticulous, secretive, and pathologically obsessed with their reputation. They do not get involved in scandals. They do not buy faulty assets." The adrenaline surged, clearing my head. "They think they're buying a $50 million trophy." "Exactly," Marcus said. "And we are going to tell them they are actually buying a $50 million time bomb wrapped in public corruption and corporate fraud. They will loathe that. They will react with extreme prejudice." "They're buying from Apex Holdings, from Sabrina," I argued. "Why would they listen to me? They won't take a call from Marcus Thorne, litigator, but they will absolutely take a call from Ilara Vance, the celebrated lead architect of the project. You are not a jilted wife. Mrs. Vance, you are the designer. You are a professional, warning them about a critical flaw in their acquisition. You must do it now." I drove to a neutral location, a high-end hotel lobby, not my home, not my office. I used my business cell phone, my voice. When I finally got their Zurich legal department routed to a New York number, was unrecognizable even to me. It was cold. It was steel. "This is Ilara Vance of Etheria Designs. I am the lead architect and designer of the Highlands project. I am calling to inform you that we have discovered a critical, undisclosed issue regarding the structural integrity of the foundation. I must meet with your representatives immediately. Failure to do so would be negligent." The lawyer on the other end was skeptical. "Our acquisition is with Apex Holdings. Ms. Vance, any disputes you have—" "This is not a dispute," I interrupted. "This is a matter of public safety and professional liability. My name is on the blueprints, and my reputation is on the line. I am informing you, as a matter of legal record, that the asset you are purchasing tomorrow is compromised. I have the proof. Meet with me, or I go public." The threat hung in the air. Structural integrity and go public were the magic words. There was a long, cold pause. "We have a team in Denver for the closing," the lawyer finally said. "Be at the offices of Harmon, Bach, and Spears. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I hung up. The Apex sale was scheduled for 10. We had a 2-hour window. I spent the rest of the night at Marcus's office, a fortress of mahogany and silence, preparing. We assembled my concrete analysis, the Project Alpine files, and Chloe's now notarized affidavit. At 3 in the morning, my eyes burning from exhaustion, my personal laptop chimed. A new email. It was from a Proton, me address, a random jumble of letters and numbers. The subject line was blank. The only content was a single audio file, JVR-FR-MMP3. My heart stopped. JVR, Julian Vance Russo. I plugged in my headphones and clicked play. The quality was muffled, clearly a phone recording from inside a jacket pocket, but the voices were sharp with anger. First, a gravelly voice I didn't know. Russo. I'm telling you, I need another 100,000. What I've done. This is my entire career. And then, Julian. His voice was not the smooth, charming tone I knew. It was a venomous whisper. Frank, we had a deal. You got your payments. You sign the final walkthrough tomorrow. And that's it. No, Russo's voice was rising, panicked. Sabrina said this was a $50 million deal. I'm the one taking all the risk. I want more. There was a sharp thud, like a hand slamming a table. You are taking what I give you, Julian hissed, all pretense of a partnership gone. If you try to back out, if you breathe a word of this to anyone, I will not only send the pictures of you taking the cash to the district attorney, I will make sure you are in a concrete pour yourself. Are we clear? A choked sound, a terrified, clear. The file ended. I stared at the laptop. I had no idea who sent it. A disgruntled employee. A rival of Russo's. It didn't matter. It was Julian, threatening to murder a city official. I saved the file to the encrypted drive. The game had changed again. The offices of Harmon, Bach, and Spears were on the 45th floor, a silent glass and steel expanse that overlooked downtown Denver like a hawk's nest. The air was cold, filtered, and smelled faintly of ozone. Marcus and I were shown into a vast conference room where 3 people, 2 men and a woman, were already seated at a table that looked like a polished slab of obsidian. They did not stand when we entered. Their suits were dark, their faces impassive. Mrs. Vance, Mr. Thorne. The man at the head of the table said. He had silver hair and a voice as smooth and cold as the glass walls. You have requested an urgent meeting. You have 1 hour. Marcus, acting as my counsel, began. He was calm, methodical. He laid out the existence of Project Alpine, the creation of the Apex Holdings Shell Corporation, the fraudulent hard money loan secured with my forged signature, and the plan to sell the asset to them for $50 million. The 3 lawyers listened without a single flicker of expression. When Marcus finished, the woman spoke for the first time. Mr. Thorne, this is a fascinating, if sordid, tale, but it appears to be an internal dispute, a domestic partnership issue. Our contract is with Apex Holdings. It is valid, and the closing is in 2 hours. The silver-haired man nodded. Our due diligence on the asset is complete. Your fight, Mrs. Vance, is with your husband, not with us. My blood, which had been simmering, turned to ice. This is not an internal dispute, I said, my voice cutting through the hushed room. All 3 of them turned their full attention to me. This is a matter of public safety. And you are 2 hours away from paying $50 million for a structurally unsound, catastrophic liability. The second man raised an eyebrow. A bold claim. A factual one, I said. I slid the first folder across the table. My original architectural specifications for the Highlands project. Note the foundation requirements: high grade, fiber reinforced, sustainable concrete. My signature material. I slid the second folder. And these are the actual purchase orders from my husband's private ledger. Standard Mix 3B. A cheap, Substandard aggregate that will not support the building's load-bearing design. I let that sink in. He pocketed the difference. Millions. But that's not the point. The point is, that building will crack. It will fail. You are buying a headline-grabbing disaster. And the inspections, the woman asked, her voice sharp. A substitution of that magnitude would be flagged. It was, I said. And then it was signed off on. I placed the third file on the table. The fraudulent inspection reports, all signed by a city inspector named Frank Russo. The silver-haired man stared at the files. You are alleging your husband bribed a city official to approve a faulty building. I am telling you he did, I said. I took the small encrypted audio player from my pocket and placed it in the center of the table. And this is the proof. What is that? That, I said, is a recording of my husband, Julian Vance, and Inspector Frank Russo, arguing last night. Russo was demanding more money. Julian was not accommodating. I pressed play. The room was absolutely silent, filled only with the tinny, muffled sounds from the speaker. We all heard Russo's panicked voice. I need another 100,000. This is my entire career. And then we all heard Julian's reply, a venomous, cold-blooded hiss that I had never heard before. Frank, we had a deal. If you breathe a word of this, I will make sure you are in a concrete pour yourself. Are we clear? The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. The air in the room had crystallized. The lawyers stared at the small device. The mask of polite disinterest had vanished. They understood. They were not buying a blue-chip asset. They were buying a death trap, wrapped in extortion and a murder threat. The silver-haired man looked up from the player. A slow, thin smile spread across his face. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. Excellent, he said, in his smooth Swiss-German accent. I exchanged a bewildered look with Marcus. Mrs. Vance, the lawyer continued, we have, of course, had our own suspicions about Apex Holdings. $50 million is a significant investment. We do not make such investments blindly. That is why my team is in Denver. He steepled his fingers. We found it. Irregular. That this asset was being sold by a brand new, untraceable Delaware entity. Ms. Sabrina Croft was unconvincing in her explanations of the quick resale. He leaned forward, and the cold smile returned. So unconvincing, in fact, that we took the liberty of placing a recording device on her person during a negotiation dinner last week. Our microphones, I assure you, are considerably better than Mr. Russo's. My heart stopped. He looked directly at me. The audio file you just played for us. It was intercepted from Mr. Russo's personal cloud storage by our digital security team. My blood ran cold. We sent it to your laptop this morning, Mrs. Vance, he said. We wanted to see if you were an honest broker. We wanted to know if you were a party to the fraud, or, as we suspected, the primary victim. You have just confirmed the latter. He stood up, a new energy in the room. Helvetia Innovations is not the mark in this scenario. We were never going to be, but you, Mrs. Vance, have just become our most valuable ally. It seems we have a mutual interest in ensuring that Mr. Vance and Ms. Croft do not enjoy their flight to Zurich. The cold, sterile air of the conference room had transformed. It was no longer an interrogation. It was a war room. We were allies, bound by a $50 million deception. We have less than 24 hours. Steiner, the silver-haired lawyer, said. His voice was clipped, all pretense of polite business gone. The first closing Etheria to Apex is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. We cannot stop it. We must not stop it. Marcus nodded, his eyes gleaming. No, we let him win. Julian must walk out of that first meeting believing he has succeeded. He needs to believe he has successfully executed the sale, paid off the fraudulent loan, and left Ilara with a gutted, worthless company. He will be, Steiner confirmed, immeasurably arrogant. He will be anticipating our wire transfer of $50 million. He and Ms. Croft will feel invincible. This was the plan we forged in that glass tower, a meticulous, two-pronged trap. Phase 1. The first closing, 10 a.m. Julian and Sabrina would meet with the lawyers Julian had hired, the ones who believed this was a legitimate, desperate asset sale. I would not be there. My absence would feed his narrative of a broken, defeated wife. He would sign the papers. The fraudulent loan would be paid by the fractional sum from Apex Holdings. The Highlands project would, for a few moments, legally belong to Sabrina's shell company. Phase 2. The freeze. Marcus was already drafting the emergency motion. The second Julian signs, Marcus explained, his hands moving as he mapped it out. The sale is recorded with the state. 1 minute after that, I will file this. He held up a thick sheaf of papers. An ex parte application to freeze all assets of Apex Holdings, based on conspiracy to commit wire fraud, forgery, and public corruption, with Ms. Jensen's testimony and the audio recording of the murder threat. No judge in Denver will hesitate. The account will be frozen before Helvetia's money ever gets near it. Phase 3. The sting. Steiner's team would schedule the second closing, the real one, from Apex to Helvetia, for 11 a.m., 1 hour after Julian's victory. A different location, a secure conference room at a hotel where they would expect to receive their $50 million payout. But they won't be meeting just us, Steiner said, a cold smile touching his lips. My team has already briefed the district attorney's office. They are deeply interested in the bribery of a city official and the structural failure of a downtown skyscraper. Frank Russo, I said. Mr. Russo was visited by detectives 2 hours ago, Steiner said, checking his phone. Faced with the audio of Julian's threat, he immediately agreed to cooperate for a lesser charge. He has confirmed everything. He will be at the 11 a.m. meeting tomorrow. What for? I asked. To collect his final payment, Marcus said, the grim satisfaction evident in his voice. He will tell Julian he needs his last $100,000 in cash before he disappears. He will be wearing a wire, and the room will be under surveillance. We will get them for the bribe, on top of everything else. I felt a cold resolve, but it wasn't enough. I need him out of my company, I said. Not just arrested. I need him gone. Legally. Marcus looked at me. The bait. He thinks you're defeated. He'll be sloppy. I knew exactly what to do. I will prepare a document, I said. A full resignation from Etheria Designs. A complete, irrevocable transfer of all his shares, titles, and interests back to me. All of it. Steiner frowned. Why would he sign that, if he thinks he's just one? Because, I said. In exchange, I will offer to waive all civil claims against him. He'll see it as his final victory. He's about to be $50 million richer. He'll think he's trading a worthless, bankrupted company to save himself from a messy lawsuit. He'll sign it just to shut me up. He'll sign it with a smile, 5 minutes before he walks into the sting. The plan was perfect, meticulous. Every piece was moving. I left the office, my mind a sharp, clear blade. I was driving, not home, but to my studio, when my burner phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. Hello. Mrs. Vance Ilara. The voice was thin, high-pitched with terror. Chloe, are you okay? Are you with Marcus's security? I am. They put me in a hotel. But, oh my God. Mrs. Vance, he came here. He came to my apartment. The world contracted. I pulled the car to the curb. What are you talking about, Chloe? When, just now my neighbor called me. She said a man was there, asking for me. A man in an expensive suit. He was banging on my door, yelling my name. And when I didn't answer, Mrs. Vance, my neighbor said he broke down my door. The image seared into my brain. Julian, not the smooth financier, but a brute, kicking in the door of a terrified girl. He's still there. No, She said he tore my apartment apart, like he was looking for something, and then he left. He was furious. Mrs. Vance. He knows. He knows I'm the one who hurt him at the mall. He knows I'm a loose end. He was unraveling. The cool, precise architect of my ruin was gone, replaced by a desperate, violent man. He wasn't just arrogant, he was spooked. He knew something was wrong. I hung up and immediately dialed Marcus. He went after Chloe. He broke down her door. He's hunting her. The line was silent for a split second. He's spiraling, Marcus said, his voice hard. He's not a calm criminal anymore. He's a flight risk. He's not going to wait for a 10 a.m. closing. My heart hammered. He's going to run, tonight, with the gold. Yes, Marcus said. The plan is dead. Long live the new plan. I'm calling Steiner. We're not waiting for tomorrow. The entire timetable just moved up. It's all happening. Now. Julian's lawyer's office was designed to intimidate. It was a symphony of dark mahogany, old books, and the smell of expensive, self-satisfied entitlement. He and Sabrina were already there, seated at the head of the massive conference table. They looked rested, immaculate, and their arrogance was so thick it felt like it was sucking the oxygen from the room. Julian's lawyer, a man who had eaten dinner in my home, looked at me with a careful, neutral expression that was, in its own way, more insulting than pity. Ilara, Julian said, his voice a sickening, oily performance of concern for his lawyer's benefit. I'm glad you came. You're doing the right thing. This is the only way to save the company from what's happened. I said nothing. I kept my coat on. I was playing the part I had been assigned the defeated wife, the failed artist, the woman broken by finances she could not understand. I let my hands tremble. It wasn't difficult. The lawyer began to read from the documents, his voice a dull drone. This agreement hereby transfers all assets, titles, and liabilities pertaining to the Highlands project from Etheria Designs, which is currently in default of its loan covenants, to Apex Holdings. He was reading the fiction Julian had crafted, the narrative of my failure. Sabrina, across the table, glanced at her watch, a slim, diamond-studded model. She was impatient to get to her $50 million, impatient to get on her one-way flight to Zurich. The lawyer finished and pushed the thick stack of papers toward me. Mrs. Vance, if you'll sign here, here, and here. Julian leaned forward, layering a final, disgusting veneer of intimacy onto the moment. Ilara, just sign it. It's just a building. We'll get through this. I promise. Everything will be okay. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time that morning, I saw the lie, the blankness, the gaping, hollow void where the man I married used to be. I picked up the heavy, gold-plated pen. I signed my name, Ilara Vance. I signed away my masterpiece to the woman sitting next to him. It's done, the lawyer said, shuffling the papers. Julian let out a long, audible sigh of relief. He smiled a genuine, triumphant smile at Sabrina. He immediately turned to his laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. And, done, he announced, mostly for his lawyer's benefit. I'm executing the wire transfer from Apex Holdings to Etheria, just enough to cover the predatory loan. The company is now solvent. See, the crisis is averted. He hit the enter key with a flourish. That single keystroke was the signal. I knew that miles away, in his own steel and glass fortress, Marcus Thorne, who was monitoring the state registry, was filing the emergency injunction we had prepared. The bait was taken. The trap was sprung. Julian and Sabrina stood up, their relief palpable. They were victorious. They had won. Julian adjusted the cuffs of his expensive shirt. Sabrina picked up her purse. Ilara, Julian said, the fake sympathy gone, replaced by a cool, brisk finality. It's a real shame it all had to end like this. Sabrina, who had not deigned to look at me the entire time, finally spoke. Her voice clipped. "Julian, we have a flight to catch, and another closing to get to." They were at the door. They were seconds away from walking out, from disappearing forever. "I know," I said. My voice was quiet, but it landed in the silent room like a cannon shot. They both stopped. They turned around, their bodies still angled toward the exit. The smug, victorious expressions on their faces were just beginning to curdle, replaced by a shadow of confusion. "What did you say?" Julian asked, his smile faltering. I stood up from the table. The trembling in my hands was gone. I said, "I know. The meeting with Helvetia Innovations." Julian's face went blank. Sabrina's eyes widened, her hand tightening on her purse. "But I think," I said, taking a step toward them, "you'll want to see this first." As if I had summoned it, a sharp electronic ping sounded from the inner pocket of Julian's suit. A half-second later, a lower buzz vibrated from inside Sabrina's purse. They looked at each other, and then, in unison, they reached for their phones. I watched. I savored it. I watched the confidence on Julian's face turn to a frantic, pale confusion. I watched him tap the screen, his breathing suddenly shallow. I watched Sabrina's hand, the one holding her phone, begin to shake, her perfectly applied lipstick parting in a silent gasp. What is this?" Julian whispered, staring at his screen. His voice was no longer smooth. It was a thin, cracking sound. This is impossible. It's an error." "Is it a notification from the bank?" I asked, my voice perfectly level, perfectly calm. "About Apex Holdings. It seems the account has been frozen. Effective immediately. By court order." The blood drained from their faces, leaving two masks of pure, unfiltered horror. They were trapped, and they finally knew it. What is this?" Julian stammered, his face a grotesque mask of chalk-white terror. He jabbed his finger at the phone screen as if the notification itself were a physical enemy. "The account. It's locked. It's an error. Call the bank." Before Sabrina could even raise her own phone, the heavy mahogany conference room door swung open. It didn't just open, it was flung open. Marcus Thorne walked in first. He wasn't smiling. He looked like a satisfied executioner. Flanking him were two men in dark suits, their badges clipped to their belts, Denver PD. And behind them, cool and composed as ever, was Steiner and the legal team from Helvetia Innovations. Julian's lawyer, the man who had facilitated this charade, looked like he was about to have a heart attack, his face turning a blotchy red. "Julian Vance, Sabrina Croft," Marcus said, his voice ringing with absolute authority. He held up a single sheet of paper. "This is a court order, effective immediately, freezing all assets of Apex Holdings, LLC." He then gestured to the two detectives. "And this," he said, "is a warrant for your arrest, for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated forgery, and bribery of a public official." The air shattered. Sabrina let out a high-pitched, animalistic shriek. He did it, not me. It was all his idea." She pointed a trembling, manicured finger at Julian. "He told me what to do. I just followed. I just loved him. Tell them." "Julian." Julian wasn't looking at her. His eyes, wide with pure rat-like panic, darted to the side door. He lunged. It was a pathetic, desperate bolt for freedom, but one of the detectives was faster. He stepped sideways, blocking the exit, his hand firmly on Julian's chest, shoving him back toward the table. "Elara!" Julian screamed, his voice cracking. The mask was gone. This was the real man, the coward I'd never seen. "Elara, you can't! We're married! You can't do this to me! Tell them to stop!" "Oh, but she can," a new voice said from the doorway. Another figure stepped in. Frank Russo, his face gray with sweat, looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. He was flanked by a severe-looking woman in a suit, the district attorney. Russo raised a shaking hand and pointed, not just at Julian, but at both of them. They did it. They bribed me. They paid me over $200,000 to sign off on the fake foundation reports, and when I got scared, he locked eyes with Julian. He threatened to kill me. It was over. The room descended into chaos. "You idiot!" Sabrina screamed at Julian. "You stupid, arrogant idiot! I told you to pay him!" "Shut up, Sabrina. You're the one who used your credit card. You tied us to it," Julian yelled back, his face purple with rage. The detectives stepped in. "You have the right to remain silent," one of them began, his voice a dull monotone as he cuffed Julian's hands behind his back. "This is her fault," Julian roared, straining against the cuffs, trying to look at me. "The architect. She's the one who designed the weak foundation I was trying to fix her mistake." The second detective cuffed Sabrina. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." "He's lying. He forged her name. I have copies, I'll testify. I'll tell you everything." Sabrina sobbed, her mascara running in black rivers down her face. They were led out, a disgusting, screeching spectacle of mutual destruction, blaming each other all the way down the hall until the elevator doors finally closed, silencing their voices. Silence returned to the conference room, heavy and absolute. I was shaking, my legs feeling like they might buckle. Steiner, the Helvetia lawyer, approached me. His cold, professional expression had been replaced by a look of crisp respect. "Mrs. Vance," he said, "the sale to Apex Holdings is, of course, voided by the fraud. The asset, the Highlands project, and the associated fraudulent debt have been legally returned to Etheria Designs, effective immediately." I nodded, unable to speak. I had my company back. "However," he continued, holding out a new, slim, leather-bound document, "Helvetia Innovations is still in the business of acquiring sound assets. We would like to make a new offer." I looked at the document. "Well, we will acquire the Highlands project for $60 million, he said. 60, not 50. "Furthermore," he added, "Helvetia will fully fund separate from the purchase price all costs associated with the foundation's demolition and reconstruction, restoring it to your original, sustainable specifications. Our reputation demands it." He paused, letting the numbers land. "There is, however, one condition. We are buying the building, but we are investing in the architect. We will only proceed if you, and only you, as the sole owner and proprietor of Etheria Designs, personally oversee the entire reconstruction. Sole owner, $60 million. The chance to fix my building, my foundation." I stood there, alone in the room that had seen my humiliation and my victory. I took a deep breath, the first one that didn't feel like it was filtered through ice. I was standing tall. I had saved my company. I had saved my project. I had saved my name. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I now knew by heart. "Chloe, it's Alara Vance." I heard a gasp on the other end. "Mrs. Vance, is it? Are you okay?" I looked out the window, at the Denver skyline, at the space where my building would one day stand, strong and true. "It's over, Chloe. They're gone." I paused, a small, real smile touching my lips for the first time in days. "And, by the way, Etheria Designs is hiring. I need a new project manager for our retail interior designs. I think you'd be perfect." Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are listening from, so please comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us an extra boost by hitting that hype button to help this story reach more people.